car every 2 or 3 years. Well, that's just a myth. In fact, it's the #1 way people get into debt. If you're in major debt right now and you're about to lose your house, first you need to sell your car. Sell your car and get a cheap one. I remember in the 80s, I actually, and I was pastor, Saddleback Church, and I was determined that Kay was going to stay at home and work at home with our 3 little babies that were just growing. And I went over to Leisure World and I bought a 1972 Cutlass for $500. Okay, those kind of deals are out there. You look around, I found and it was, as ugly as sin. I mean, it was just, this yellow and had this kind of vinyl top on it, but it only had 43,000 miles on it. Only had 43,000 miles. So I bought this car for $500. I then took it to Mexico, across the border, to one of those, paint places, and interior, and I got an all brand new interior, leather, vinyl, velvet stuff, and cars on the outside, little dingleberries hanging down, and but I had the whole thing done for less than $1,000. So that car cost me $1,500. I then drove it for the next 5 years. When I finished, the staff affectionately called it La Bamba. And it was, and I drove it for 5 years, and then Amy drove it when she started driving, then Josh drove it when he started driving. When he got out, we gave it to Pastor Tom. He drove it for a couple of years. Then Tom gave it to his son Ryan. Ryan drove it for a while. And then it went over to Jordan Carver. I think it had 7 or 8 drivers. The life of that car for $1,500. Now that's an amazing deal. And I saved thousands of dollars because my ego wasn't tied to my car. Does that make sense? In fact, this was in 1987, was when I had bought this, and they'd had these televangelist scandals, Jim Bakker and Jimmy Swaggart. And I remember that the LA Times sent a reporter down to Saddleback, and they were looking for another scandal. A famous pastor who was ripping off the flock and fleecing the sheep and living some extravagant lifestyle. And so the reporter came in. I said, sure, come on down and talk. So he sat down. He opens up his valise to take notes on this interview. And his first question was, what is your salary? And I don't know. I think at that time my salary was like $50,000 or whatever. And so I told him my salary. He said, do you wear a Rolex? And I said, no, actually. And the watch I was wearing at the time, it was a Mickey Mouse watch I had won at Disneyland. For being like, the 100th person to the turnstile. And it was, I had won it. And actually, it's a Mickey Mouse watch I won free at Disneyland. He goes, what kind of car do you drive? And I pointed out the window at La Bamba. He closed his valise and said, that will be all. I said, what's the matter? He goes, there's no story here. So that was it. So you may need to go sell your car and get away from those payments and buy something cheap, because you can afford something that you pay off and then you're not paying interest payments on it, things like that. Anyway, extravagant spending, a lot of people buy way over than what they can afford on that. Number 6, looking for get-rich-quick ideas is a sign that I'm in the debt trap. Looking for get-rich-quick ideas. When you are always trying to way to make a lot of money fast, if I could just win the lottery, or so, don't do it. Proverbs 21, verse 5. Remember, Proverbs was written by the wealthiest and wisest man who ever lived, Solomon. And he says there, steady plodding brings prosperity. Hasty speculation. What's that mean? That means get-rich-quick schemes. Brings what? Poverty. People often get in debt by living in a fantasy world. And again, fantasizing is always about tomorrow. And, I'm always waiting for the big deal to close. I'm always waiting for the ship to come in. That ship is never coming in. Now, you might have to swim out to it, but it isn't coming in. And you're always waiting for the big deal. You're waiting to win the lotto. There's a word for people who play the lottery: loser. Okay? It's not an accident that the poorest people tend to be the biggest lottery players. The smarter you are, the more educated you are, you realize the odds of that, listen, friends, you are more likely, the odds are more likely that you're going to get to go to the moon than win the lottery. How likely do you think you're going to get to go to the moon? Not very likely. How likely do you think you're going to win the lottery? It's far worse odds than even you getting to go to the moon. So the stupidity of gambling is based on the idea of getting something for nothing, and the Bible says that doesn't work. In fact, in Ecclesiastes 5:7 it says, dreaming instead of doing is foolishness. Now, these are all signs that you're in the danger trap. And I've talked with a lot of people who are, you say, Rick, you're just reading me to the T. But let me tell you, there's hope. There is hope. You can get out of debt, and there is a way out. So on the back of your outline, let's go through the 9 steps to getting out of debt. These are simple, but they are not easy. There's a big difference. They're simple, but they're not easy. Here are the steps. Number 1, commit. I commit to becoming debt-free now. It always starts with a decision, a choice, a commitment. And you say, more important to me than getting the next big thing, more important for me than looking cool, more important to me than having what I'd love to have is to be debt-free so I really have genuine freedom. And that is a commitment. You say, well, why don't I just file bankruptcy and start over? It's legal. Yes, it is legal, but legal doesn't necessarily mean it's moral. There are a lot of things that are legal that believers shouldn't do, even though they're legal. Abortion is legal. There are a lot of things that are legal, but it doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. Now, it's not going to be easy to get out of debt. It's going to take a commitment, and above all, it's going to take time. You didn't get in debt overnight. You're not going to get out of debt overnight. But I promise you, if you will do these things, you will get out of debt, and one day you will be debt-free. It takes discipline. It takes perseverance. It takes delayed gratification. Above all, it takes character. And while you're working on your debt, God is going to be working on you. And you're going to end up a better person by following these steps to get out of debt. Now, nobody just drifts out of debt. You don't drift out of debt. And that's why you have to do these steps. It's intentional. Number 2 is I start paying God and myself first. I start paying God and myself first before anything else. These are the principles of tithing and the principles of saving. And I talked to you about it yesterday where we call it the 10-10-80 plan. That whatever I make, the first 10% goes back to God in gratitude to Him and in obedience to Him and in faith to Him. And the second 10% goes to me. You pay yourself before you pay your debtors. And then you learn to live on 80%. I can't live on 80%. Then you're living too extravagantly. You can live on any amount if you learn to cut expenses. Remember I said yesterday, to be debt-free does not mean more money. It means less spending. And so you pay God first, and then you pay yourself right off the top. Tithe to yourself, and you tithe to God. Now, this is going to mean a major reorganization, likely, of your finances, but it is the benefit of it is incredible over time. Because if you start saving 10% of everything you make and you put it away for you, you will be amazed at what happens. Let me read this to you. Oh, that's the wrong thing. Never got it. I'll read it to you later. Let's go on to number 3. Number 3 is list all I own and all I owe. List all I own and all I owe. And we've got a workbook. We're going to go a little bit more deeper into that with Chris in just a minute. Proverbs 24, verse 3 says, by wisdom a house is built, and through understanding it is established. You've got to have an understanding of where you are financially. Let me give you another verse to write down. Proverbs 18:13. Proverbs 18:13 in the Living Bible says, "It is stupid to decide before no